This podcast is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Make sure you use our affiliate link down below.
I give up. I'm so bad at this.
I'm using that. Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in CEDH. I'm Cam.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Tyler.
And this week, we're all together because the Lord of the Rings magic set has officially finally come out after our long anticipation, and we're going to be talking about all the good cards in cEDH.
I'm so excited. I can't wait.
We're going to dive right in. We're going to be going in Wooburg order this time, back to our roots, starting off with one of the first cards previewed from the set, which is Reprieve. This is 1 and a white for an instant that returns target spell to its owner's hand, and you get to draw a card.
This is Remand.
It's basically a white Remand with slightly better implications.
Why is it better?
Because it can get around uncounterable things too. So like you can bounce back the spell since it doesn't actually say counter. So like your Abrupt Decay and stuff like that. Fuck you.
There's exactly one situation in which it is not better, and that is if you are running Baral, Chief of Compliance. And other than that, it's better.
Yeah, definitely. I think this card is cool, especially in white, because white often has access to Rule of Law. So if you bounce a thing up to their hand, there's a chance they won't be able to play it back again that turn because they've already cast their spell if you have the Rule of Law. I think this card's cool. Yeah,
I think this synergizes very nicely with what white wants to do. Remand should have been a white card to begin with anyway, so I'm glad that they went back in and they basically eroded it here.
Should it? I mean, certainly not if it's a counter, or maybe.
I think what it does, I agree. I think it's kind of a white effect.
I guess. I see this as white creeping on the color pie, but I mean, Wizards has been trying to make white a lot better, and I guess they probably weren't going to do that without stealing parts of the color pie from other colors. So I guess this is the new reality.
I mean, they've invented all the mechanics already, basically. So you kind of have to.
They explicitly haven't. There's definitely new mechanics every set, but like the Ring Tempts You is from Legends. Like, come on.
So overall, it's pretty good. It's not going to see play in like every single deck. And if you're running blue, you are not touching this. But otherwise, it's a really nice thing for white to have outside of cEDH too.
Low color white decks would definitely play this, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that in Rule of Law decks, this gets a lot better because it's something that can't be recast right away.
So is this like a reason to play in like a Tim the Tana or something like that? If you're playing like a Staxy creature deck like that?
That's 4 colors. I think you have too many good cards.
Cards. Yeah, that's
I think we're in mono white territory.
All right, Boromir, Warden of the Tower, is outside of just mono white territory. This is 2 and a white for a legendary creature human soldier 3/3 with vigilance. It says whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell, and you can sacrifice this Boromir to have creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, and the ring tempts you. So this is our first instance of the ring tempting you coming into play here. I don't think it's really something that's going to take over cEDH as a mechanic based on what we've seen.
No, basically all the ring tempt you does is turns one of your creatures into a legendary creature, which I guess could come up for like Mox Amber, but probably isn't. And it also gives them evasiveness and some looting when they deal damage. From what I've seen, it's not super powerful in its own right, but it's just slight upside.
You know what? It does help with the channel ability of Otawara and Boseiju too. So that could potentially do something, but I don't know how relevant that is.
How?
Because its cost for the channel ability is reduced by however many legends you control.
I understand. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so
nice.
with Boromir and tempting the ring, it's pretty easy to get Otawara down to 1 mana, but I don't think you should be building your deck around making Otawara a 1 mana activation.
Certainly not. I think it's also worth saying while we're talking about the Ring Tempts You for the first time that for cEDH purposes, the last one you care about is the second one, which is Loot. And Loot isn't that great in cEDH, but it's still card selection. So, more or less after that point, the Ring Tempts You might as well not have text.
I don't know. I think Skulk is the worst one. Looting fuels your graveyard strategies, and you can see more cards.
That's what I'm saying. Looting is the best one.
Oh, it's the best one? I thought you said it was the worst one.
No, he's saying that's where you stop. It doesn't matter to further progress after that because the other ones don't do anything.
Typical me and Tyler not understanding each other on the set reviews.
What the fuck did you just say?
I think Boromir is going to be great in Winota. I think this is a real card.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't even talked about that first line of text that really makes it good. The Lavinius line of text there.
Yeah, it prevents Force of Will, a lot of other free counter spells. It's really super helpful. Protects your things in combat damage. I think this card's going to be good.
Can't evoke anything either. Well, specifically like the
new
free
ones.
evoke ones. Yeah.
It's worth remembering that like Lavinia and Yasharn, this is sometimes going to be a disadvantage if one of your opponents has the free interaction that stops another one of your opponents, but you don't not play these effects just for that reason.
Yeah, and
it
you
just
can
makes
also
them a little worse.
you can also sacrifice this at any time to give your creatures indestructible. So if that is
That's
the case,
true.
you can always say, "I'll sack it if you show me the force of will that you can stop this other win."
That is a great point.
Yeah, really like this card. This card's going to find a couple of different homes in cEDH, so I'm excited to be able to play Boromir. Our next one is a card that you will actually see in our gameplay video coming up this weekend, Gandalf the White. This is one of the decks that Tyler actually built to, so I'll let you take it, but let me read first, so hold your horses. 3 and 2 white for a 4/5 legendary creature artifact wizard. It is a flash creature that says you may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash, and if a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. What do you think of this, Tyler?
This deck was pretty sweet to play. I had a really tough time building it. I think there are two directions it can really go, which is leaning very heavily into stacks and the ability to select the stacks piece you need at the right time, because a lot of them will incidentally end up having flash, versus going a much more combo route. People are talking about using KCI combos with it a lot, which is not the direction I chose to go, but is also like reasonably viable, kind of a la Teshar, though I think it might be a worse KCI deck than Teshar. Hard to say yet. I think people are still figuring it out, but it is definitely up there with mono white commanders. I don't think it's the best mono white commander, but it's certainly viable.
Reminds me of like Yeva, like on the mono green side, having a commander that can give your stuff flash is really powerful, and you can win on top of people.
Absolutely.
So I understand where like the KCI lines come from, but I don't know. I kind of like your build too.
Yeah, and it's also worth saying like the double enter the battlefield effect for things like artifacts is pretty relevant. So this causes you to want to run some weird things like Archaeomancer's map, but also gives you some great synergies with things like Portable Hole, where you're going to be able to hit 2 targets.
I would not be surprised if this card takes down a commander tournament and then never sees play in a tournament again after that. This feels like a deck that's going to very easily snipe a tournament, and then everyone's going to know what it does, and then it's going to have a much harder time after that.
Yeah, this is like the exact kind of card for that. And definitely a card that I'm going to have to read like a billion different times to remember what all this triggers off of. So in general, Gandalf the White, pretty good. Probably better in 60 card formats, but we like Gandalf the White here. So that's it for the white cards. Not too much white here. Even less blue, though. Our only blue card we're going to be talking about today is Stern Scolding. This is a 1 blue mana instant that says counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less.
This counters a lot. It stops Dockside. It stops Nasus Oracle. It stops Kiki Jiki. I think that's important to say, but counterspells are not good because they can stop creatures. They're good because they're good in a multitude of reasons. I'm not sure if this one is good enough, but it's definitely close. I don't know. What do you think about this card?
What I've heard people saying that I think is exactly correct is that it is not going to reasonably see play because it's too narrow in any deck except Krark Sakashima, where it can hold people off of commanders and relevant cards multiple times by never really leaving your hand if you're kind of in the mode where you're getting going. So I think it might find a home there, but I think pretty much no other deck is really going to want this.
This card reminds me of Minor Misstep. To me, it feels like a slightly better Minor Misstep, where it's just a really cool and interesting 1 mana counter that we could have access to, but it doesn't hit what I want it to hit. Like if I want a creature counter, I want to make sure that my creature counter could also hit the 2 commanders I'm most worried about, Winota and Tivit.
Right.
Like those are 2 that I really want to make sure that I can hit. But I also don't want to just counter Winota and Tivit. Don't get me wrong. I want to make sure that I can also counter like everything else that comes up. So I don't know what other 1 mana spells I'm cutting for this. Maybe Dispel, but even then, that's going to be tough because this doesn't help you in a counter war at all.
Yeah, I think historically the strength in counterspells relies in not their ability to stop win conditions, but the ability to fight over things on the stack. So the ability to sometimes protect your own thing and also sometimes disrupt your opponents. So them being one-sided, I would just rather removal most of the time if they're only stopping creatures. Obviously, I know Dockside and Thassa's Oracle removal is not good there, but there are plenty of other things that can stop them before they get to those situations, or can stop what comes after.
I would rather play Dress Down 100% of the time over Stern Scolding.
I think I'm with you on that, and I also think most decks, the decks that do run Spell Snare probably keep Spell Snare over this because it still hits Dockside and a bunch of other relevant 2 mana targets.
And spell snare's really low on our list of counter spells.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So I feel like this is probably lower.
This is worse than spell snare, probably.
Yeah, I think so too. I like putting the 1 mana counter spells on these lists so that we can at least talk about them because I know they always generate a lot of hype. But this one I just don't think is going to become a staple of the format.
It's no offer
Not
you
even
can't
close.
refuse.
Yeah.
It's no offer,
no
you,
offer
can't.
you can't
I've
refuse.
refused this Stern Scolding a ton.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
It's a
'cause I
scolding
really-
that you may refuse.
Because I really want to say "fool of a took" every time I cast the spell, but I just don't think I'm going to get to cast the spell. So, all right, let's move on to black then. Nasty End is on this list only because it's very similar to a couple cards that don't really see a ton of play, but sometimes see play. This is 1 and a black for an instant that says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice Rograk. I'm sorry, I mean a creature. It says draw 2 cards, then if the sacrifice creature was legendary, draw 3 cards instead.
Yeah, in Rograk decks, this is a 2 mana draw 3. That's kind of why it's there. And there are other cards that for 1 mana can sack a creature and draw 2 cards. I think 2 mana for 3 cards is a substantially better rate than 1 mana for 2 cards. Maybe.
It is?
I
think
don't know.
so.
I feel
I'd
like
rather pay 2 mana for 3 cards than 1 mana for 2 cards, I think.
so. If I'm in Rog Silas, I'd rather have Village Rites, but I feel like maybe if I'm in Rog Tevish, I'd rather have Nasty End.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how fast you're trying to go because if 2 mana is if the plan is to play this turn 1, I think you don't always lean into spending 2 mana on the draw 3 cards.
I don't know. It's tough. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to see play, to be honest, but it's close. We don't really have this yet. We don't have something that does this 2 mana, draw 3 straight up, minimal downside. We don't really have something like that. So
Yeah. I guess the other thing that's good about Village Rites is that it doesn't matter what the sacrifice creature is.
Legendary
Even
or
if it's
not,
not Rograk, you're going to get more cards than mana you spent on it.
Yeah, that's true.
And Nasty End isn't necessarily that way if there's like a Drannith Magistrate in play that's messing you up. So
Do decks that are Hulk piles want this? That because they usually want consistent sacrifice outlets.
well,
but is
they
there a
also
world in
don't
which-
want Vampiric Rights, from what I can tell a lot of the time.
You mean Village
so
Rights?
yeah, Village Rights. They also don't want Vampiric Rights. But yeah, I don't think they want Village Rights anyway, so I think they definitely wouldn't want Nasty End.
I think the only time this sees play is if you're playing Rograk. That's the only time it's worth
Only
considering.
time I would consider it. Yeah, same with Village Rights, kind of. So
Yeah, maybe.
yeah. All right, here's here's the first one we're gonna be super fucking stoked to talk about here. Orcish Bowmaster.
Finally.
1 and a black for a creature orc archer. That's a 1/1 with flash. It says when Orcish Bowmaster enters the battlefield and whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, Orcish Bowmaster deals 1 damage to any target and then amass Orcs 1.
There's so many extra words on this card that make it so much better than I feel like
Yeah.
it should have been. Flash is incredible. It's the thing happens on an ETB, which is also incredible. You can just ping off a mana dork for free if you want to. It makes an extra beater. You can pretty easily, if a Tymna's coming at you, flash this in, ping the Tymna, use the orc to block the Tymna. And also the ability that lets you machine gun your opponents or machine gun the entire table. This card, I think, is like the card of the set for sure.
Dude, any card that gives you 2 bodies on 1 card is already going to be
Already
busted.
good.
Like Tymna loves this. Any deck that's playing like a Notion Thief kind of strategies loves this as like another thing that you can do with Notion Thief now that we don't have Hull Breacher.
Yeah.
Yep, this and Flash and all that. It is a superb card. In other conversations, I expressed the opinion that it might be bannable. I've played against it a little more since then, and I'm not sure that this is in bannable territory, which, to be honest, makes me kind of sad because I'm someone who enjoys creature decks, and this is terrible news for creature decks.
Yeah.
When there is no imminent wheel, this really ends up doing a lot less, obviously, but there's enough incidental draw that just being on the battlefield makes it feel like a stacks piece that says you can't play 1 toughness creatures, which is really rough.
In a Ristic Study world, which I feel like we are comfortably in right now, this card is also excellent. It does so many things for such a small amount of mana. I think like every black deck is gonna at least want to try this card out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The only miss of this is that it doesn't have reach. It's like the first archer in Magic that doesn't have reach.
Is that true?
I think so, because that's like a big thing that they talk about all the time is that
Yeah.
flavorfully archers have reach.
These are
and this
orcish
doesn't.
archers. Maybe that's the difference.
So do they just fire arrows into the ground all the time?
Maybe they can't jump high enough. I don't know.
Maybe their
They can't
damage is
tilt
shooting
up.
you in the foot.
The way their arms are built, they can't shoot up. They can only
Oh.
shoot straight and down.
I see. Okay. I guess that makes sense. In the art, no one's shooting up, so I guess that's
Have you guys
totally
even
fair.
seen the movies?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, no, orcs never shoot up.
They never shoot up.
I've seen the movies. They know.
Yeah.
That's a fact. You can look that up.
you can look that up if you're not an orc, because they can't look up.
Orcs can't look. They can't use their fingers properly for keyboards.
That That was incredible. Oh my god. All right. Spiteful Banditry is our next card. This is X2 2 red. X red for an enchantment that says whenever Spiteful Banditry enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to each creature, and whenever one or more creatures your opponents control dies, you may cast a treasure. You may create a treasure token. This ability only triggers once each turn.
This card is very hindered by that last ability, but what's the black card? Meat Hook Massacre?
This is
very similar.
Heat Hook Massacre.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
Limited by that one treasure per turn, but even with that, I think this card is like fine in a lot of red decks. This is more often than not going to sweep the table. I mean, you're going to be spending like 5 or 6 mana to really kill everything a lot of times, which is a lot of mana, but you get at least one treasure back right away. Is that correct? You get one back?
As long as you kill at least one thing, you get one back right away.
Yeah.
I think this is probably only going to really want a home in decks that are concerned around like one big creature strategies. So mostly what I have in mind is Niv Mizzet, where I think there's a reasonable chance that you want to cast this for 1 or 2 to clear the way of some stacks pieces and create treasures that are going to give you the pips to help cast Niv Mizzet. The fact that it sticks around like Meat Hook Massacre is not as good as Meat Hook Massacre, which does the Blood Artist effect, which is probably more powerful. But getting incidental treasures here and there, as anyone who plays Smothering Tithe knows, is like pretty good. And so it's not like your opponent's creatures are not going to die for the rest of the game. So I think even if you're only making 1 treasure per turn cycle, this probably feels better in most decks than Anger of the Gods or Brotherhood's End.
And even then, I think making 1 treasure per turn cycle is even pretty generous.
It's not bad, yeah.
Like, I've been thinking about this card for Magda just because it can get you incidental treasures, but the problem there is that you kill your own Magda every single time that you cast
dwarves,
this.
which
And
you
all my
wanna build up
dwarves,
on,
yeah. So I'm basically wrathing myself and putting myself in a terrible position to maybe make 2 treasures down the line. I don't know about it there.
I agree something like Niv Mizzet's much better.
Can we just say, too, if this was asymmetrical and dealt damage to creatures your opponents control, this would be on Bowmaster's level. This would be an unbelievable card.
If it only
really.
played wind, if it only kill your opponent's things, it would definitely be one of the better cards in the set for sure.
Yeah, but as of now, I really don't know about it.
I think Godo might want it. Honestly, I think Godo could play something like
I
this.
could see Godo, too.
I could see Godo with this too.
There's a couple homes, but certainly not every deck.
This versus like Fire Covenant. What do you like better?
Fire Covenant.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think too.
Yeah, I think they're comparable, but I think Fire Covenant still is.
It's an instant. It's only ever 3 mana.
That's really it.
You can spite. You can get exactly what you need.
Yeah, it's that once each turn thing that really shuts it down. That takes us from being like a actually pretty good card to absolute not great. Well, I guess not absolute not great. There are a lot of good situations. I'm just sad that this is a treasure card that I'm not stoked about for Magda.
It's close. It's so close to being broken, but they
really is.
definitely fixed it.
Again, just Niv Mizzet, because then, if you get him out, you're killing creatures on your opponent's turns anyway,
Right.
which is
Exactly
where you want to be.
Yeah, it's best there, I think.
Our next card is Display of Power, and our $100 patron AJ Alwosabi has a couple things to say about that. So without further ado, here is AJ.
What's up? What's going on, guys? Everybody's favorite $100 patron, AJ Alwosabi, here to bring you my favorite card from the new Lord of the Rings set, Display of Power. Games of cEDH a lot of the times feel like they're won or lost on the casting of a high-impact spell. And Display of Power gives you the ability to turn that dynamic absolutely on its head. Whether it be deciding the outcome of a counter war or copying and resolving a high-impact spell like Ad Nauseam or Peer into the Abyss before the original caster, Display of Power feels like it's always going to be exactly that when it's cast, a Display of Power. So I can't wait to get this card and start grinding out in a couple of cEDH games and really get a chance to feel the impact of it. But once again, bringing my favorite card and one that I think is probably going to have the highest impact in cEDH from this set, Display of Power.
Display of Power. I'm going to read Display of Power real quick. Display of Power is 1 and 2 red for an instant. It says this spell can't be copied, and it says copy any number of target instant and or sorcery spells. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Ceiling very high, floor underneath the ground, 6 feet under. This card can be really good in certain situations, but I think unfortunately more often than not, it's not going to do a ton.
It really is looking at just like giant counter wars on the stack for the most part. There's a couple other cases with winning lines that you can also execute if someone casts the right spell. But I think most of the time this is just going to feel like in the realm of in the realm of Mind Break Trap, but much, much worse, where its function is to operate on a really large stack, and at that point, you know, you're holding up 3 mana for that. I don't think so.
I don't even know if like a mono red deck wants this to like have another way to interact. Like right now, your best counterspell is to Bolt's Trickery, and this is
Deflecting Swat.
yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, okay, Deflecting Swat into Bolt's Trickery, and then after that, you have no other stack in it. So Red Elemental Blast,
yeah.
Pyroblast, and then, okay, so this is worse than all of those things.
The only thing I can think of is, does Kraken Sakashima want something like this?
So I asked that on the Discord, and most Discordians
Said no.
responded saying no.
No, okay, yeah. That was my only thought. Anytime a red Stormy card comes into existence, I think, can Kraken Sakashima break this bad card?
I
This
don't
one,
think
maybe
you
not.
have any troubles making copies of things in Kraken Sakashima.
Yeah.
And this is what I would want to copy, but this being uncopyable makes me not want it in that
You can
deck.
copy your own stuff, though, right?
You can copy your other things, but again, you don't have a problem copying the spells that
already
you're
doing
casting in
that,
Kraken
yeah.
Sakashima. Yeah, that deck doesn't have a problem with that.
Okay, 0 out of 5. Next.
0 out of 5, but thank you, AJ. Next card is another Magda card. This is GLOIN Dwarf Emissary. This is 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature Dwarf Advisor that says whenever you cast a historic spell, create a treasure token. Of course, this ability only triggers once each turn.
Oh,
But you can tap and sack a treasure to goad another creature.
how do you feel about this in Magda?
I'm very mid on it in Magda so far. So, like, what would potentially make this good is that you can create 2 treasures per turn cycle with this. And if you can consistently do that, this is phenomenal. You can't do that if you are using one of the treasures to goad a creature. At that case, at max, you're making 1, or you're breaking even, because if Magda is out, you just break even on treasures with this. The goad, I don't love the goad ability. The best case scenario for goad is that you can get if you don't have a dwarf tapper in play, you can clear the way if someone only has 1 creature so that you can get in at them and make a bunch of treasures with the dwarves that you have in play. Outside of that, you can use it on like someone's opposition agent to try to get off that board. But at that point, then whoever they attack knows that I need opposition agent off the board, so they're also incentivized not to block.
Yeah,
Or it unlocks someone else's stuff.
That's the other thing too, right? So like I think there's definitely some cool aspects to this card where it's definitely worth trying out to see how frequently I have a historic spell to cast on my turn to make 2 treasures in a turn cycle. But if it's not going to make me 2 treasures in a turn cycle, it's way too worse than Dwarven Blood Boiler for me to want to play a second 3 mana dwarf.
Yeah, I think at 3 mana, this card is just too expensive. The best thing that the goad does is get rid of like card advantage things like Timna, because that'll be your opponents will be eager to block those things if they send them in. But you're right, the opposition agents aren't going to get blocked. So
Yeah.
Two questions about this, because I don't play Magda, but my instinct is that if this had haste, it would be an auto include, because you can tap it right away even if you're just attacking.
It would be a lot better, yeah, because being able to use it to attack as opposed to goading something seems a lot better.
Follow up. I think this card is low powered enough that they could reasonably have printed haste on it and kept it costed the exact same. So
Probably.
like, yeah, did we just miss out on that? That's a bummer.
it's close. They were aware of the power level of some of these cards, I think. It
Yeah,
seems
especially because they know that
not
these
not
cards...
Bowmasters.
like. Yeah,
Nah,
we got that one.
But I think especially because they know these cards are going into Modern, like breaking mana is something that they are very
Yeah.
particular about in Modern. So I can't say I'm surprised to see on the 2 cards that could potentially make you multiple treasures a turn that they totally neutered it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Almost. Close. Worth trying.
Yeah, I think it's worth trying. I don't think it's going to be as easy of a slot in as the next card we're going to talk about, which is Cavern Horde Dragon.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, this is 7 and 2 red for a creature dragon that's a 6/6. It costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest number of artifacts an opponent controls. One opponent in particular, so not quite like Dockside. It has flying, trample, and haste, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token for each artifact that player controls.
In best case scenario, this is a 2 mana, 6/6 flying trample haste that deals 7 damage or deals 6 damage and gives you 7 treasures on combat damage, right? Like that's what this is going to do in its best case scenario, or much more than that, perhaps.
Yeah, but that's like a dream scenario.
Yeah.
You're only getting the treasures from 1 player, so it doesn't add up for everything. It also doesn't count enchantments, so you can't count Rhystic Study and stuff like that. I realistically see this getting me 2 to 5 treasures realistically once it hits someone. And if it's getting me 2 treasures at a time, that's enough to kind of help me push Magda into a spot where I can get a second activation right away. That's really why this is good. If this can get me 4 to 5 treasures where I can like tap Magda and attack with this and be able to get a second Magda activation, and the games that I can't win the game off of a singular Magda activation, this is going to be a really good one to go for.
Yeah, definitely. I think the ceiling on this one is pretty high, and the fact that it's tutorable with Magda specifically makes it worth it. I don't think it sees play in any other decks.
No,
but
me neither.
In Magda specifically, as well as just like now you have an option to like, I'll find my dragon that helps me get treasures. You can also find your dragon that helps you get card advantage by getting the other recent one. What's that one?
Chiscoria?
Chiscoria dragon.
Yeah.
You can get your dragon that helps you get bodies. Like you have so many routes of just like fairness that you can play on Magda if you're not going for the unfair route. So I think that's a cool addition.
I think so too, yeah. This is definitely, hey Magda, can we have Dockside Extortionist? Yeah. Magda says, no, we have Dockside Extortionist at home.
Yeah.
And it's this. All right, well, that will clear up the red section then. We're going to move into green then, and we, again, only have 1 card to talk about in green.
Pretty good one, though.
It's a really good one. Yeah, this is Delighted Halfling. This is 1 green for a 1/2 creature Halfling citizen. You can tap it to make a colorless mana, or you could tap it to make 1 mana of any color, but that mana can only be spent to cast a legendary spell. However, that spell can't be countered.
The only thing that I want to say before I give the microphone to Tyler is that 1 mana mana dorks don't come up often, and normally 1 mana mana dorks, they're good. Okay, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the place to start talking about this is by talking about why Boreal Druid does not get played in cEDH for the most part. Boreal Druid being the one green mana dork that we pretty much don't play. It taps for only colorless mana, and a lot of times that's just not good enough, even though it's close in some decks. This is that plus Cavern of Souls for your commander and other legendary creatures if you have them incidentally, which I think is good enough for just about every green deck. I think there are very few that won't want this. It is also not nothing that it has 2 toughness, especially after ORCISH BOWMASTERs just got printed, because it does not get picked off by the immediate ETB, which is super salient. Obviously, as a Kinnan player, I'm really excited because the legendary restriction on the mana it makes with its second ability is not copied when you get it with Kinnan. So this also taps for 1 of any color in Kinnan decks. So I think more or less every green deck wants this. Kinnan absolutely loves this, and it's delightful to see more, hey, this can't be countered stuff. I think putting that on a creature instead of having it the exclusive territory of Cavern of Souls basically is pretty nice.
I love this casting Dosin off of this, which is a legendary green creature that allows you some protection.
Yeah.
Casting 3 fairy, Little Teferi, because it caps for legendary of any permanents. It's not just creatures, right? So you can cast a fairy, and then your opponents can't cast things on your turn, and you can go for a protected win.
Yeah, Myrel also.
Myrel also. There's a couple other, any type of legendary creature permanent or anything that gives you protection, you would love to cast off this to make it uncounterable. And then, yeah, it's going to be a great card.
The floor is like so much better Boreal Druid.
Right, yeah,
that can
exactly.
like cast your commander uncounterably at the floor. So this thing is nuts. Again, the 2 toughness is bonkers.
Very helpful.
Love this card. Every single green deck just got that much better.
Maybe not every single, but a lot of them.
Most green decks. Yeah. Thrasios?
That's the only Thrasios decks I'm maybe not as sure on, but like even like Najeela would like love something like this.
Oh yeah, this is just another mana dork that casts Najeela.
Thrasios probably does want this. You're probably
yeah.
right. Thrasios does. I'm not convinced it goes in every green deck ever, but it definitely goes in most of them, and you definitely try it out after playing green.
Alrighty. The next card that we're going to talk about is actually a pair of commanders here. These you will see in Sunday's gameplay video. This is Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, and Sam, Loyal Attendant. Here's my monologue. Frodo, white, black for a legendary creature, Halfling Scout. It's a 1/3, partners with Sam, it has vigilance, and when Frodo attacks, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. Sam is 1 a green and a white for a halfling peasant. It partners with Frodo. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a food token. And it says activated abilities of foods you control cost 1 less to activate. So these 2 are the partners that are the face of the food precon deck. We're really not here to talk about them a ton. It's really just that they are the commanders that we use to showcase the SAMWISE GAMGEE card, which is from the original set. This is a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature, Halfling Pleasant. It says, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token. And then it says, sacrifice 3 foods, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand.
Halfling pleasant.
I did say pleasant, didn't I?
I know, it was very pleasant.
Well, he is a very pleasant halfling, so
not as pleasant as the delighted halfling, but it's up there.
That's very true.
The reason why we're
Which
talking
halfling
about
is more pleasant?
the reason that we're talking about this particular Sam is that it's a great new Hulk pile. With this and Grand Abolisher and a Sack Outlet and that new Cauldron Familiar, which really isn't a new card anymore. It's been around for a while and it's been broken in other formats a lot. Those are 4 cards at 6 CMC or less that you can create a loop by sacrificing the cat. When a cat comes back in, you can make a food. The food will be made when the cat comes in because Sam will see it. I'm not explaining it super well, but you can sacrifice the food to bring the cat back. The cat comes in and creates a food. Sacrifice again with your Sack Outlet. And when the cat comes in, you drain the table.
And you get a bunch of food when you sacrifice your Hulk because Sam will see the 3 other creatures come into play alongside of him.
Right.
Or 2 other creatures, however much it ends up being.
The actual commanders themselves are kind of just mediocre card advantage, card selection, a little bit of life gain, and they kind of let you discard a card. So if you're playing reanimation spells, you can discard the Hulk. That can be kind of helpful. But the main reason why we played them is because they can fit the new Hulk line, and it's also Frodo. We have to have Frodo in like the gameplay game. Come on.
Just because we didn't kind of explicitly say this, even though you've certainly implied it, this is pretty definitively the best Hulk line now. Like before, I feel like there were more than one. You would sometimes situationally X or Y, but the fact that it gets Grand Abolisher right away means that really the only thing you can possibly worry about are channel abilities when you're trying to go off with this line. So it makes Hulk substantially better.
Yeah, because didn't before, like if you wanted to get Grand Abolisher in play to go through your combo, you also had to have like activated Sleeper and something else then too?
You normally had to go through a couple like double Hulk lines, which I think this is just extra protected. You don't have to go through things more than one time. So yeah.
So there are no interaction points where they can stop you halfway through the Hulk line.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of like it for that. Definitely higher on SAMWISE GAMGEE than we are Sam Loyal Attendant.
Yeah, definitely. Normally, I think if you're playing this Hulk pile, you would just play like Timna Halar?
It's basically Timna Halana is
Timna
basically
Halana,
what that
that's what
deck
it
is. Yeah, basically.
Timna Halana?
Yeah, it's it allows things to fight when things enter or something.
Yeah, you pay 2 mana, it can fight.
It shittily helps you kill your Hulk, but it's just like a pretty average Abzan Hulk deck. Someone's upset that I'm saying it's pretty average. It's like the Abzan Hulk deck.
I thought like Timna Tana was like going Hulk now for a lot of those lists.
Some of them are. Some of them
I'm
are.
going Hulk. That's what the Hulk says, right?
Yeah. I think with this line, you only have to be an Abzan. I know there have been a bunch of different Abzan Hulk decks, and that one is normally the one that I see the most.
Gotcha.
Yeah, me too. Great. All right, we're gonna move on and talk about Lotho. Lotho.
Lotho?
Lotho. Lotto.
When have you ever seen TH and pronounced it Lotho?
Lotho.
It's a Lord of the Rings card. You guys should know
this. This guy's not in the movie,
You're
so
kidding
I don't
me.
know.
You read the books. You know this one?
I did. I didn't have them read aloud to me, so I could still be wrong, but I've been saying Lotho.
Lotho is what I would say.
But it's just L-O, not L-O-O.
That would be Lutho.
That would be Lutho.
No, that's L-O-U. Lou. L-O-U is Lou, like Louis.
L-O-O would definitely be Lutho, though.
How do you spell Lufa, Cam?
L-O-U-F-A?
No.
Lufa is definitely L-U-P-H-A.
Oh, you're so right. Yeah.
You are antagonizing me on purpose, and it's working, and I'm furious.
What does this card do, Cam? Read it.
This is a white and a black for a 2/1 legendary creature halfling rogue. It says whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose a life and create a treasure.
We already know that Crom is good, so we already know that this triggers often. It gets treasures instead of cards, which treasures are worse than cards, but treasures are still really good.
This costs a lot less than Crom.
This costs a lot less than Crom. I love this in Dargo lists or other things that want to use treasures as much as possible. I'm definitely considering it in Timna Jeska, but I don't know if it's good enough in decks that want to go fast.
A slower Timna deck, I think, might want this. By slower Timna deck, I don't know what that is. I don't think that's like Timna Tana, and I'm pretty sure I'm not cutting anything to put this in like a blue farm list. I don't know.
Maybe.
What do you cut? Like, there's so many cards for blue farm that you already want. 2/1 is a very fragile body. I would so much rather play the ORCISH BOWMASTERs.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Instead. That makes 2 bodies. Like, I'm much more comfortable cutting a card for that.
This one just says words that we want to see, I think. It says the second spell for turn is a good wording, I think. If it gives you a benefit, that happens a lot. And treasures are great if you get them without investing additional mana. It can attack with Timna, yada, yada, yada. There's a bunch of things. It's close.
If this makes you 3 mana for 3 life, I think that's a great rate right there. That's a great ritual rate. Is this a commander?
Maybe. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Tymna's better, right?
Tymna's strictly better, yeah.
But
this
Yeah,
is-
I mean, it's only mana advantage, so I think then the question you ask yourself is, like, if Malcolm didn't have partner, would it be a commander? And
if
was
Malcolm
somehow
didn't have
two
a thing
colors.
to counter or
Yeah.
thing to
And I
combo
think,
with, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, we're going to move on. Aragorn the Uniter. This is a red, green, white, blue for a human noble legendary creature that is a 5/5. Whenever you cast a white spell, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Whenever you cast a blue spell, scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, Aragorn the Uniter deals 3 damage to target opponent. And whenever you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn.
Food chain.
Food chain.
When you're casting Squee over and over again with the food chain combo, every time you cast Squee, if your commander is out, you'll deal 3 damage to an opponent, each opponent,
And opponent.
and you just keep on doing that forever.
This also works if you're going through Dockside Teamer Sabretooth loops, too. Every time you recast your Dockside, you can also deal 3 damage to the table.
Seems pretty good. Definitely not the best 4-color food chain commander. Probably. I think Atraxa still gets it there as
That might be true.
I don't think this is the best 4-color food chain deck in its colors,
Yeah,
even.
Omnath is also, there's a 4-color
Yeah,
Omnath
that's right,
Sans
that's right.
Black that also does food chain that probably does this a little bit better.
Honestly, the reason why this is good is because there is a lot of different value that you can get. And there's like stuff that you'll see in like this coming Childuin game where actually the +4/+4 even does a lot of substantial work too. That being said, though, there's no real card advantage here. Scry is nice, but it's not putting cards in your hand. And that's where Thrasios Brews and Omnath will end up being better grindier engines here.
I think if you're in like Staxy food chain, like you're heavy on green white stuff and you're like going into like the make lots of tokens and trying to make them big and like win fairly if I can and then like back up on food chain, maybe this is something there because it does something that the other options don't do in that way.
That's true.
But I don't know if that's a better game plan than just going kind of more all in on it.
Yeah. This deck also plays like Underworld Breach stuff that you can do just because you're in the good colors for it. So let's see how that does this coming weekend too. And then the last commander that you'll see in this coming gameplay video is Sauron, Lord of the Rings. This is 5, a blue, a black, and a red for a legendary creature avatar horror. It is a 9/9, and whenever you cast this spell, amass 5 orcs, mill 5 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It has trample, and whenever a commander an opponent controls dies, the ring tempts you.
So I played this deck this weekend. It has some good things for it and some bad things for it. Let's go over the good things. The good things is that you can kind of play a regular Grixis list and use this as your outlet for a Dockside loop where you're bouncing things back and forth, either with Baron Master Wizard or with Cloudstone Curio. You mill through your entire library, make a huge orc, and then eventually you can bring your Thassa's Oracle back in play. Even if you do bring it in early, your combo is like bouncing stuff, so you can bounce the Thassa's Oracle and then recast it once your library is milled after casting this back and forth. I also like that this can kind of help you play fair a little bit. A lot of times this is going to be a big giant 9/9 body plus another 5/5 body, and then maybe another thing like a Dothi Voidwalker that you already sacrificed. Unfortunately, the big negative for this is that it's 8 fucking mana, so it's really, really hard to cast. The Drowned Magistrates are going to come out way before that you get to cast this most often, and it's a Grixis deck that you don't have anything active to help you in the early turns of the game, which are like the most crucial, important turns for Grixis. So I'm not sure if it's going to see play going beyond this. I like that it can be an outlet for a Grixis combo, and it's cool. Sauron's fucking awesome, but I don't know if it'll see play past this. There's just too many good Grixis options.
You're in the best colors, so like you will definitely pick up some wins. Period.
Yep.
Also, I don't know if we care about it, but since my role is to be pedantic, you did say amass 5 orcs, which makes it sound like you make 5, but it is just amass orcs 5, as every other amass.
So you're right, and I have been saying amass 5 orcs in general when I talk about this, and the reason why I actually kind of like that wording more is because it is an army that you are assemblying.
Right, but you're also wrong because it's amass orcs 5. It's not amass 5 orcs.
Yeah, but remember, I don't care.
Valid point.
I don't care.
I think it sounds very Lord of the Ringsy to say amass orcs 5 because I feel like that's how hobbits would talk. They have amassed Orcs 5.
See, that
That's
makes
how
it
they talk, right?
to me. That makes it sound like you are programming something into a computer more than you are like actually creating orcs in a legitimate way. Because illegitimate orcs, I am so sick of.
Fair. All right.
Aren't they all illegitimate? None of them have like wedded parents, right? Isn't that?
I don't know. I don't really know the interlacings and workings of orc society.
They get like born out of the ground.
They're hatched.
Are all orcs
Yeah.
born out of the ground? I thought only the other ones.
So originally, orcs were twisted elves.
Oh yeah, so they were born as elves.
But
elves were born.
but those were the orcs. The movies specifically follow the Uruk-hai.
Those are made.
Those are made.
Yeah.
So I think that's different from an orc.
Definitely. Uruk-hai are like human orcs, kind of, right? Or they're like just super orcs.
They're a stronger.
They're just
orc.
stronger
A
orcs, not human
stronger-
orcs. Just
yeah.
like stronger orcs.
Making them human would actually make them worse.
That's probably true.
Yeah, because humans are like one of the weakest races in all of the Lord of the Wings.
Cobblepot, I'm so
Wings.
sorry.
Yeah,
we
Lord
were
of the
close.
Wings.
Great. Any other cards?
We have 2 more cards we're going to talk about.
All right.
We are going to talk about the land before we talk about the colorless card here, actually. Mount Doom.
This is awesome.
It's so fucking cool. It's a legendary land. You can tap it to pay a life and make a red or a black.
Already playable in certain decks.
Already Rakdos decks are throwing pathways out
Yeah.
the window. For a 1 red and a black, you can tap Mountain Doom to deal 1 damage to each opponent. And for 5 a red and a black, you can tap and sack Mountain Doom and a legendary artifact to choose up to 2 creatures, then destroy the rest. Activate this only at sorcery speed.
So that last ability is not going to happen a ton. There's not a ton of legendary artifacts that you want to sack. Both
Mox
Citadel.
Opal is
I
like
guess,
actually
yeah.
one that a lot of
Okay.
decks
And Mox
play.
Amber.
Yeah, Mox
Mox
Amber,
Amber,
Mox
yeah.
Opal. I
Fewer
guess
decks,
There's
yeah.
a couple, but not
Rock
a ton.
Racks and stuff like that. Like these kind of decks would play Mount Doom over anything else.
I think the main thing is that this is a red-black land that pings you for 1 that you don't really mind. I think the fact that it can be a win condition in World Gorger Dragon, as you're flickering through your lands, you can keep on tapping this over and over to ping everyone, correct?
That's hilarious.
So, like, that's nice and helpful.
But World Gorger Dragon is mostly a not favored combo right now
That's
because
true.
it's
Although I
easily
play it, it's
disruptible.
awesome.
Have you won with it?
Yeah, I win with it all the time.
Do you really?
That's normally how I finish the game. Yeah,
That's so fun.
I have the Grand Abolisher out by that point. By the time I'm there.
Oh, okay,
but
that
yeah.
makes sense. Oh, you know what? You did win once
Yeah.
this weekend with it. I remember.
So good with World Gorger Dragon combos. Also good in the Ob Nixilis that cares about hitting your opponents for 1. But for the majority of decks that may run this, it is probably just the first line of text that you care about, and basically not the other 2.
Yes, agreed. This only sees play in Rakdos decks and some 3-color red-black decks, not all. I think it's just awesome to say play Mount Doom. Like,
Yeah.
that's fucking awesome.
Mount Doom.
But yeah, I think this is low enough downside that more decks than you would think would want it, just on it being an untapped red or black land.
Depends on how much you care about your ad nauseums, though. For like
Yeah.
some of those red-black decks that are very fast, very ad nauseum focused. But for something more like the Timna Jessica deck that you're playing, that's 23 lands and much more in on like Bolus of Citadel, I think there's a lot more in something like that.
I would be interested in playing this in that deck for sure.
Definitely. We saved one of the better cards for last. This is the One Ring.
Wow. Read it to me.
Wow. This is 4 mana for a legendary artifact that is indestructible. It says, when the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. And you can tap it and put a burden counter on the One Ring to then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring.
I think this card is surprisingly good. It reads kind of bad. It's a 4-mana do nothing that draws you 1 card, but then it draws you 2 cards, and then it draws you 3 cards. And we know how powerful Ristic Study can be the longer it sticks around. The life loss is going to be pretty negligible, and you even lose the life after you draw the cards, which a lot of times would be relevant because you can draw the cards at instant speed. I think in low color decks, I don't know. I think this card's really good.
Yeah, I think this card is pretty strong and sees play in a reasonable amount of decks. I will say it was in the Gandalf the White deck that I played because being able to play it at flash speed makes the protection from everything clause a lot better. Because any combos that are killing you with damage rather than a win the game clause are just not going to be able to kill you. And then, you know, in a lot of instances, there's a reasonable case that you can then turn the corner and kill the last remaining player. So that is super relevant. Other people have made the point that in decks that already run Seedborn Muse, this is one way that Seedborn Muse really closes out the game, to which you could also say you probably should just be able to close out the game with Seedborn Muse anyway, but I think it's a very good point. This draws 10 cards on a turn cycle if you get it down with a Seedborn Muse out, which is absolutely insane and backbreaking. So yeah, I think people will probably experiment with this, but because it's all generic mana, it's reasonably easy to cast. And for a card that comes down and feels like it might do close to nothing or only draw you one card, I think this is about as good as it gets.
It's going to snowball very quickly. I think the second time you tap this and it's a 4-mana draw 3 cards, it gets like close to good. When it's a 4-mana draw 6 cards, it's really good.
That's really good,
And
yeah.
then anything past that, you should probably win the game, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 ring. Better than it looks at first glance. I think this card's going to see a lot of play.
Definitely. Is it better than Rhystic Study?
No, definitely not. But it's like it's close. I think you can compare it to Rhystic Study in like sometimes in power levels and non-blue decks.
Yeah, I think what's worth saying is that it is better than Phyrexian Arena-like effects. Like,
Yeah.
it is definitely better than
Yeah.
that. Those don't really get played, but this
Rhystic
probably
Study
does.
doesn't kill you because of burden counters.
Right.
So
That's also true. The life losses are going to be largely irrelevant, though, I feel like.
Yeah, I think
if you, I mean, even with Seedborn Muse, like losing 10 life is a pretty decent amount of life if you're going around. I mean, you're not going to care.
I think you only lose the life on your upkeep.
Yes, but like if you still get a burden counter, put a burden counter on it, then draw a burden on. I don't know. Maybe it's not actually.
You'll only lose 4 if you go through the Seedborn things, but you'll draw.
Yeah, you're
more
right.
cards
You draw
than
10
that.
and
You're
lose
right.
four.
So like you draw more cards than you lose life, which is
Dude,
always
you
a good
lose
rate.
like so little life.
Yeah,
with
look,
this. Oh my
besides that
God.
whole argument, like, just the fact that Necropotence is still good tells you that 1 life per card is fine.
So is Necropotence still good? Because we also talked about that earlier today, and maybe it's not. So this is better than Necropotence. I'll go out on a limb and I will say that this is better than Necropotence.
maybe
This is already easier to cast than Necropotence. Arguably, this gives you protection. This can not necessarily make you as much of a threat as Necropotence because you are going to lose life, but you're not going to lose life as quickly. It is slower than Necropotence, but I don't think that means that it is worse than Necropotence.
I think I'm at least going to insist that in mono black decks and perhaps 2-color black decks, Necropotence is still substantially better when you have like a decent chance of casting it off of fast mana turn 1 and the pips aren't a challenge.
Yeah, I think this sees playing more decks though. This
Yeah,
is going to see
yeah,
playing more
yeah, I
decks
think
than
so, too.
Necropotence, just because it sees playing all the 2 and some of the 3-color non-black decks.
I might be running this in Kinnan, and I'm certainly not running Necropotence in Kinnan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think the protection of everything until your next turn
Also
is
relevant.
really nice. So like you can't get attacked that turn, whereas Necro, you take a fucking beating when that comes into play.
Yeah, it allows people to forget that you have your card advantage too, because it's been a whole turn cycle, which is like sneakily something that's worth considering. And it also helps protect you against the early win conditions. A lot of the things that are trying to win in the early stages of the game are actually not Thassa's Oracle. I feel like a lot of the early win attempts are some type of dual caster, some type of Kiki Jiki, some type of infinite pinging, which this does protect you against. So I think you're significantly advantaged to like try to like get this out with an early mana vault or something like that.
Yeah.
And just on the list of things that also can't hit you early game, you can't be brain freezed for your entire
that's
deck.
also that's also potentially relevant for sure.
Cool. Yeah, very, very interesting, very powerful card I'm excited to try out. But that sounds good. So we talked about 19 cards today.
Nice. We definitely missed something.
We probably missed something, although this power level of this set is certainly not as high as some other sets we've talked about. There are definitely still a lot of very interesting options for CEDH here.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so on Patreon, like our $100 patrons.
Cool Bean Man, Luke Cook, Young Mox, AJ Alwasabi, Demon of Rosgrees, Kawaja A. Hamid, Lauren Connell, and Baby G-Bus.
If you want to pick up any of our merch, you can do that at playtowinmtg.com.
Huge shout out to Dragon Shield. Thank you so much for supporting the show, and make sure you check out our affiliate link down below.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for all of our content.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
All right.
Lutry's dad.
Stashes.
Mitchell Shepard.
Justin.
Man Solo.
Stephen Schlichty.
Big TP15.
That green guy.
Pedro.
Jacob Depp.
Michael Blue.
Jan Wildfang.
Thomas Bueno.
Swampy McGee.
David Nelson.
And Jormags.
I actually think there's one more thing that we should do. Up to you guys, but because I think it's a fun discussion that everyone is having. Are you throwing the ring into the volcano or selling it for $2 million? Like that whole discussion.
I definitely made that joke in the beginning. Of course I would sell it.
Oh, did you already?
Yeah, I did. I'm on a TikTok. I did make that joke. But other people have also made that joke. Realistically, I would fucking sell it. Yeah, definitely sell it. It's life-changing amounts of money.
Yeah, no. I think so too. It is an awful waste, but
I would try to make some type of gag and pretend like I threw it in the fire or something. But no, yeah, I would definitely just sell it and make $5 million or something.
I would try to commit to the bit for so long that I go to a volcano with no intention of throwing it in, but then totally accidentally like drop it, and then like a gust of wind takes it out of my
I think you
hand.
should try to like raise the prices that way. $10 million and hold it over the fire and say, no, $50 million or I'll drop it.
I'm gonna lower it on the fishing rod if you don't.
Hold it as ransom.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you do?
Man, I want to pretend, but of course it's a life-changing amount of money. I have heard people say, like, if you could get a Kickstarter going that would, like, crowdsource enough money that people wanted you to throw it into the volcano enough to match that amount of money, that would be sick, but I think realistically it's not going to happen. Because if someone asked you, will you pay me to get absolutely no benefit, I would say no.